welcome. Are you ready for the topic, quantum? Yes, all right. I'm Scott Likens, PwC's innovation leader, and I'm very excited to have the discussion today. So first, let me have some introductions by my colleagues here. Amani.
Hi, Scott. So Amani Hakim, I'm heading innovation for IDEMIA Secure Transactions. So if you don't know the name IDEMIA, we are somewhere on you, within your wallet, within your smartphone, because we issue 1.6 billion credentials a year. So that can be your payment card, that can be the SIM card, physical or digital within your smartphone. So here to secure transactions of citizens and consumers every day.
Christian?
Yes, thank you very much. So my name is Christian Beigneau. I'm a technical business developer and quantum solutions expert at Pascal. So Pascal is a French full-stack quantum computing company. So we are delivering and developing this new emerging technology, a neutral atoms-based quantum computer. We are developing the software stack, and that is used to implement on these devices. And we are investigating various use cases and applications across different industries to benefit from this new technology.
So let's first get started. Why are we here talking about quantum? PwC, as the innovation leader in emerging technologies, we've been looking at these for a decade. And over the past 8 years, we've published something we call the Essential 8. So of thousands of technologies, what were essential for businesses to be investing in? And for 7 years, they really didn't change. As you would expect, AI, IoT, virtual reality, augmented reality, things like that. This last year, we added 2 new technologies, quantum and neuromorphic computing. Both of those related to how we're going to compute in the future. Of course, today we're going to focus on quantum. But if you start to look at 5 and 10 years ago, quantum was a R&D topic. Last year here at VivaTech, we talked about quantum, but it probably was one of the few talks. But if you start to walk around now, quantum as a topic has hit many executives' radar. Last year, we did a CEO survey, and quantum showed up at 29% of CEOs were going to invest in the next 12 months. Blockchain was at 30. So think about that. 3 years ago, quantum wasn't on the map. And now it's even with investments in quantum in this calendar year. So as we looked at these technologies, of course, AI has taken most of the oxygen from every conversation. But what that's forcing people to think about is new ways to compute. If you understand the challenges we have now in making enough GPUs, we always thought the cloud was infinite. We know that's not the case. I'm really excited by the side innovation that's happening, and the numbers are starting to prove it out. So 30% of CEOs investing in quantum this year. I can tell you at PwC, we've been building our quantum team for a few years. One of our challenges is finding that talent. We're going to talk about that. Where do you find particle physicists? Do you just wait outside of CERN with your business card? There's not enough people understanding the math and the physics behind some of what we're going to talk about today. So first, let's start off with Christian. Tell us more about what you're doing in the quantum space, and you mentioned a full stack. Give us kind of a broad spectrum of where Pascal is focused and what's happened over the last kind of year, because I think you guys have been doing pretty well. So give us an update.
Yes, of course. Thank you for that. So indeed, so Pascal was founded 5 years ago in 2019, and we are representing what we call neutral or cold atoms technology, which is one of the more recent arrivals in the quantum technological space. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, with quantum computers, there are many different types of technologies. You can build up a quantum computer based on different types of physical principles. There are various large and small actors that are building these various computational devices. And neutral atoms technology is one of the more recent arrivals. And especially in the past year, it has been of increasing interest because of the scientific and research breakthroughs in alleviating a lot of technical bottlenecks in how to scale up these devices, how to make them much better performing, and how to increase their functionalities. All this is to aim what we call the fault-tolerant quantum era. So for now, quantum computers are still an emerging technology. We are in what we call the NISQ, so a noisy intermediate scale quantum era, wherein machines have limited computational power, and they produce a rather large percentage of errors. So a lot of the more recent efforts in research and also in industrial deployment focus around how to reduce these error rates, how to make these quantum computers as close to their ideal, their theoretical version as possible. And in this direction, for neutral atoms, we have seen many breakthroughs. So it is today the most promising quantum technology. And with Pascal, we are very happy to be at the forefront of this industry, not only on the research and development side, but also in the industrialization. In fact, just 2 days ago, we have announced the very first actual purchase of a quantum processing unit by an end user. It was Saudi Aramco from Saudi Arabia who is buying a new generation Pascal device. And this is really the first occasion in the world that an end user, a final user, is buying this computational resource for only their own in-house usage. So we really think that this is, I would say, just the tip of the iceberg, but it is a necessary milestone to make the technology, I would say, not just a research-based prototype or something that's meant for research labs and academic investigation. It has industrial relevance, wherein it is still under investigation, but it is starting to have impact in terms of providing acceleration, impact in providing better, more performing methods, and also impact in terms of reducing the computational cost and the energy cost of already deployed methods.
And a follow-on question, I was going to get to energy because your approach does not require you to supercool down to the temperature of space, right? It's a very different approach. Can you explain the laser tweezers? Am I remembering that right?
Yes, optical tweezers, correct. Yes, indeed. So neutral atoms technology is one of the few quantum technologies alongside trapped ions and photonics technologies where we do not require liquid cryogenics, so an active external cooling for the device to work. Indeed, a Pascal machine is an optical installation that uses various sets of lasers. All these lasers, their source and the electronics that goes with it is functioning on room temperature, and we use these laser sets to manipulate individual atoms inside a vacuum chamber. So inside this vacuum chamber, it is pure vacuum, or as perfect as it is humanly possible. Within this vacuum chamber, we are trapping by heavily focused laser light individual atoms that enter. If they enter this trap, it is physically a trap that it is not allowed to leave from a specific part of the space. So these optical traps, these optical tweezers hold the atoms in place for the computation. We carry out the computation by manipulating the energy level of these atoms. For us, each atom becomes a unit of information, what we call a quantum bit or a qubit in our technology, and we are manipulating their energy levels to carry out the computations. Inside the vacuum chamber, since you only have your atoms present and your atoms are trapped, like physically trapped and cannot move, thermodynamics dictates that the temperature is low. But it is a consequence of our magneto-optical trapping and not a consequence of external cooling. And therefore, the most energy-consuming component of these devices, the cryogenics, is avoided for the machines.
Fantastic. So optical tweezers. Everyone learned something new today? So Amani, there's a huge, you talk about identity, you know all of us through our identity, but there's a huge mountain ahead of us with cryptography if you think about what quantum's going to bring. Can you talk about what you're doing in this space and what you look at the future around quantum for your industry?
Yeah, well, as I was saying, we provide secure credentials. At their core, there is cryptography, which is kind of a lock which prevents access by fraudsters to your data and to your transactions. Christian was mentioning a superb tool. Cryptography, as it is designed today, has been existing for tens of years. And today, if you use RSA cryptography, which is one of the most common ones, it takes, for the most efficient computer in the world, 300 trillion years to crack it open. With a quantum computer in a few years from now, these 300 trillion years become a few hours, putting obviously your data at risk. And this is a risk we don't want to take. One thing that people could think is, yeah, but the quantum computer is not quite ready yet. However, the threat is here today. I mean, we've been talking about this since 2021. For IDEMIA, we announced the first 5G quantum safe SIM in 2021, and there is a good reason to that. It's first, if fraudsters steal data today, and if you look typically at the health sector, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act in the US reported that the threats and the frauds in the health sector in terms of data breaches are increasing 25% year on year. The data which is stolen today and will still be sensitive in 5 to 10 years will be accessible to people that stole it today. So that threat on your data, which is today protected, and by the way, in the risks analysis, often if your data is encrypted, it's even considered safe and not even a data breach, then that threat is already here. And there is a second reason which makes it very important to act on this. You probably are aware of smart meters and IoT devices. So these IoT devices are booming. We expect them to double between today and 2030. A smart meter chip, which is deployed in the field, has 15 years of lifetime. So all these chips we put today in the field will still be in use when the quantum computer is ready, actually, to basically break the cryptography and hence create security risks for your transactions, your data, and your own confidentiality. So we've been working a lot on that, and we work on this as an ecosystem because it's a responsibility to work together. We work first and foremost with our customers. We announced 1 month ago a partnership with Telefonica to work on the first IoT system and environment which would be quantum safe. And we're also working with the ecosystem overall, because here again, so we have a project called High Perform, which is a project funded by France 2030 and the French National Quantum Strategy, on which we work with partners, with startups, with the security agencies like ANSSI or with the CEA, to be able really to work on this as a group. It's really important that to understand that it's a matter of responsibility for companies involved in the security sector to work on the next generation of post-quantum cryptography together. We have standardization bodies like the NIST helping us, but it's very important to invest today not only in the theory, and our crypto experts are working on that. We've got 50 crypto experts and 800 engineers really working and investing in that. But it's really also to start testing, to start looking at what it will become in terms of the use cases in real world, because migration won't take 2 minutes, it will take years.
Yeah, I want to stay on risk because I feel like this is a slowly, suddenly risk. And you mentioned, do you think we're already behind? If you think about encryption, it's a time-based privacy. And with quantum, we start to break through that suddenly. What's the biggest risk for executives now? Is it just ignoring it or thinking it's too far out? Or how do you have that conversation of investing for something that may be 5 or 10 years, but it could take that long to actually remediate?
I mean, if we look typically at the banking sector, we do start seeing executives, central banks in particular, starting to push on these topics. I think we are still in that phase where people tend to discover the size of the threat. And as you said, quantum computers were just an R&D topic 3 years ago for most of the companies. Luckily enough, it wasn't for us, and our customers do trust us, but we actually need them to invest today in testing actually on these topics, because otherwise we'll definitely fall behind and we won't be ready on time, knowing how efficient these companies have been in the past few years.
And Christian, as executives are thinking about investing in quantum, there's risk in that because the time frame's unknown. How do you have that conversation? You said Aramco finally first end user. How did you get them over the line? What was that discussion like? And how do you have that discussion about investing in something that people think is very far away?
So obviously these discussions don't happen overnight. So for instance, us with Aramco, we have been working together with them for the past 3 years. And in general, for quantum computing, what is important is to build expertise. We have our expertise internally, but what we promote is to have expertise externally, so that a lot of people become familiar with how quantum computing works, what is it capable of doing, what is it not capable of doing, what is the role of a quantum computer, and based on these principles, try to identify what are the short-term use cases in which you can have some kind of impact, and what would be the long-term use cases or even long-term risk that you need to be aware of. So building this center of excellence, this really competence basis at companies is where it has to start. And going from that, after a couple of more or less successful collaborations, you can really see are there any good indicators for your company, for your business line? Does it make sense for you to deploy quantum computational resources, or can you afford to wait for a couple of years when the technology becomes less of a rare resource, a bit more widespread, more accessible, and much more mature? So it takes time, it takes exploration, it takes effort to look around and see what works, what doesn't work, and it also takes a lot of investigation from the classical point of view. So if I were to come back to my previous example with the energy efficiency, so today, we don't necessarily have the habit of evaluating use cases by how energy efficient it is, how much resource we actually use, how much energy we consume for our day-to-day activities. And when with quantum, there is the potential that it can reduce it, we need to know what is the benchmark, what is the classical reference. So the thinking has to start from the classical point of view, to really look around what we have, what's the problem, what could be the problem now, in 5 years, in 10 years.
I'm glad you mentioned classical, because we're seeing a huge hybrid push right now, classical AI with quantum AI, and I think there's got to be that benchmark to go after. So we're going to come to the audience and start with any questions you have on entanglement, superposition, optical tweezers. I'm going to do one final question, so think about what you want to ask these experts. Thinking about misconceptions, I want to go from the end point. What do you think the big misconceptions are around post-quantum cryptography?
I mean, I don't think we can talk about misconceptions, but I was mentioning earlier that our current cryptography is at least 20 years old, which means it has been future-proofed. And before we made it live in systems, actually, which are used on a daily basis, we tested it a lot. We have already today algorithms typically standardized by the NIST, and we need to remember that out of the 5 that were selected initially, 1, maybe 2 of them. The second one is still being investigated, but the psych algorithm was breached after 1 year, not with a quantum computer, but actually with a classical computer. So for the moment, cryptography is math, and we apply theoretical math with a theoretical model of what a quantum computer would be able to do. So there is definitely a risk that these algorithms are actually not 100% safe. So the first thing that we will go for is, here again, the word hybrid. So we will keep our existing cryptography and add the post-quantum cryptography on top. So back to the lock, you don't replace the lock, you add an additional one. So if one is broken, you still have the second one, which is safe. And the other thing which is very important is that we need to migrate to post-quantum cryptography with a crypto agility mindset. We can't live in a world where cryptography is estimated to be a given for which you have 20 days to migrate after a breach is uncovered. You need to be able to update your systems when a data breach is discovered without having to stop them and without having to recall all your cars equipped with a chip. So that's really 2 challenges that we need to have in mind.
It's not just passwords that are encrypted. Every chip out there, it's
physical hardware, it's logical hardware, it's your communications on a daily basis, it's the internet protocols that are at risk here. Yeah.
Audience questions, yeah.
Thank you. You have mentioned short-term use cases versus long-term use cases. Can you share, if not confidential, some of the short-term use cases you would see, or your, let's say, prospects or have in mind?
Yes, definitely. So in terms of short-term use cases, we can think of two types of problematics. The first would be any kind of simulation-related tasks. So here I'm talking really about material design that can come for pharmaceutical industry, but in a non-conventional way, or manufacturing industries as well, to try new composite, new types of materials. Describing these types of systems is something that is a quantum computer supposed to do by definition, as it was envisioned by Feynman in the 80s. The second type of problem that is more short-term is the optimization, synergy with optimization-related tasks. For instance, in logistics, optimizing telecommunication networks, electricity grids, these type of problems. Here, the bottleneck is that it's very quickly becoming very complex for classical computation devices. However, we have very, very well-performing approximative or heuristic algorithms, but they don't provide the best solution, and they can still be limited by the size of the problem. With the current stage of quantum, or quantum in a year or two, these non-attainable problem sizes and problem complexities in the optimization domain can be addressed with this emerging technology. And then for the more longer term, I would say the first candidate and the biggest candidate is the various synergies with artificial intelligence and machine learning. It is still an exploratory field from a research perspective, at least in a classical domain as well, and what could be the actual impact, how to solve differential equations with it, for instance. That's a very new topic. And if you add another complexity layer with quantum on top of it, how it can benefit from one from the other. So we really talk about synergy, because quantum can also benefit from machine learning methods, and machine learning can benefit from quantum methods. But it still requires a lot of investigation, a lot of experimentation to better our understanding before we can really think about how that part would be going on a more industrial scale deployment.
And maybe just a quick follow-on, a tangible example, the traveling salesperson mathematical problem. We did a classical AI optimization. We had to travel to 3,500 cities in the US, find us the best routes, the least amount of hotel rooms, the lowest fuel. It did great. Then we did a hybrid where we clustered in classical machine learning to the qubits we could use, and then we quantum optimized, solved the problem about 12% better, which is big numbers when you're moving people around, and it solved it 60% faster. So what you saw was around 200 cities, it flatlined. It solved the same problem no matter how many cities we threw it. So that's right now. That was actually last year. So that was last year. The quantum computers continue to increase the qubit, availability. So optimization is one that's valuable today. The math is slightly different, so you got to think through taking that machine learning to a quantum machine learning. So there's work to do, but the value is there already, even without the full quantum compute that's a year or 2 or 5 years away. Other questions?
Thank you for the presentation. Good question about democratization, because so far quantum computer is only for company who can handle it. And maybe this is the reason that can accelerate that fast, is it becomes like an open source. So do you think there will be sooner an open way that people can access to those resources?
So there are two parts to this question, I would say. So on the, I would say, software and algorithmic side, actually the quantum community has been rather open and transparent about this development, especially on software development, having access to programming tools, languages, notebooks. Most of the industrial actors and research institutes provide open source access to these tools to involve more and more people to start experimenting, to get feedback, to push the science, to push what's industry relevant forward. On the other side, having access to the physical machine, that is still a bottleneck, because quantum computers are still considered a rare resource. It is not exactly easy to build a quantum computer, as I can say from the perspective of Pascal, and we are not the only one about with this issue. It takes some time, but this is something that is coming, and more companies are getting committed to delivering more machine hours, more access to the machine, which you should expect, I would say, almost an exponential increase in the coming years, because it is we are having more and more examples of industrial relevance and of interesting problems that people want to experiment on. So it is also a question of more people have the need They want to access it. Therefore, us providers have to keep up and have to provide this access. And this is something that is coming. And in the coming years, I would say you can expect with a much more democratized access to this, hopefully less rare resource now.
And I think you're seeing the hyperscalers are really focused on opening up access. As mentioned, the APIs are pretty open source, so it's really the physical limitation, how much time you get on there. But just in the last year, we alone have access to probably 6 or 8 different quantum computers, and it's pretty easy to get time. It's not necessarily cheap, but so democratizing to an end user, probably further away, but the ability to get to it. And I'd say, I think what's happening in cryptography, it's very much an organic open source community. You know, from what NIST is saying, there's a lot of people hands-on, you know, trying to solve that problem. So I love the innovation that's happening grassroots there. I don't know if you're seeing something different, but I love that.
No, it's really the responsibility that we have to work jointly on these topics is very important. So that applies to the use cases you have. I mean, in terms of drug research, also in the health sector, there is a responsibility to work jointly and with a common effort on these topics, which is very important in our view.
Other questions? All right. Think about them. So maybe I'll end up with, what's your prediction? No, I mean, how many years? Tell us exactly. I want to know exactly. No, talk about the next 12 months and maybe beyond, separately. I mean, the next 12 months, where do you see the focus, at least for Pascal? And then after 12 months, I won't put a time frame on it.
So for us, for Pascal, actually, this is going to be a very interesting year and second half of the year because we are going to release our second generation machine, which is going to increase the system size and the capabilities from 100 qubits to 1,000 qubits. 1,000 physical qubits available in our device. So it is something that we have showcased in experiments already, that we have managed to trap and manipulate 1,100 atoms. So we are well on track to deliver these next generation machines. And with that, we actually internally are investigating that we will be able to propose problems for which classically they are not feasible, or it could take millions of years to be solved. And we are not the only companies in this track, so we are really expecting a lot of interesting developments, not just on the scientific side, but the industrialization and the actual utility, the actual, I would say, almost quantum advantage or quantum gain of this technology.
1,000 qubits, that's exciting. How about you, next year and beyond?
I mean, I was mentioning the partnership with Telefonica, but basically getting into more use cases, testing with our customers and with the ecosystem, turning that quantum cryptography into a reality, and also optimizing performances. There are lots of things to do to be able to make it not only working and protecting, but also very efficient in terms of processing power. So that's definitely our priority for the months to come and years to come.
Who else do you need in the ecosystem to get that right? I mean, it feels like there's a lot of players that you've got to coordinate.
Security agencies are very important in that topic because regulation can help us still drive knowledge about the side of the threat and the urgency of addressing it. We work with startups. Security is a problem of ecosystem, as I said, so we really need to work with all companies which are providing other elements of the security end-to-end. We need also the experts in quantum computing because without them we don't know exactly how their computers work and how good will be protected against them.
Yet either.
I hope they do, or more and more every day, and we all learn together. But I think that's really the we really need to work jointly on these topics.
Excellent. Any final questions?
Cool. Thank you for this. What are the key things that you want to take to your investors or people who don't know about quantum computing to kind of convince them that they should be getting into this?
Anyone else?
I mean, for me, you can start with the size of the risk, which is probably the first thing you need to analyze when you look at quantum topic. Some of the existing cryptography is not at risk. Some of it is at risk. So map your risks. It often creates a sense of emergency to your shareholders. So I'm talking about the protection. In terms of the opportunities, I think the gain will obviously be important.
And on top of that, I would add that it's also important to consider how fast the technology has been developing, and this is something that's increasing with the increase of the community, with the increase of the interested parties, and the impact it can have on the industries. So obviously, cryptography is something that's present for almost all industries, but this is not the only type of problem. That's the only use case that can be cross-industry. So, and the more we know about this, the more we know about the impact, the bigger leverage we can have for investors as well to see that it is going to be, it is coming, it is accelerating, in fact, the way it's coming, and the impact it can have is touching much more than you might think, especially if you're not familiar with the domain.
And I was just going to end on talent. You know, there's not enough talent in the world to do this. So if this is a 5-year problem, how do you train up enough people in quantum mechanics in 5 years? PhD takes longer. So how do we build that talent pool to solve really important problems? Final question. Okay. Quick. We'll answer quick.
Oh, you know what? If there's no time, I'll follow up in person.
We'll do it offline. Thank you very much. That's your little view into quantum. Appreciate it. We'll be around if there's any other questions. Thank you both. Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.